Welcome back to the Major League Gaming Heart of Swarm exhibition games here. Crank has been undefeated so far today, taking out 2 Protosses, a Zerg and a Terran. We're about to throw a second Zerg at him, see if he can withstand this Assault of the Swarm. Total Biscuit says he's known for a PvZ sniper, and every commentator knows this through his runs into major events over the last couple months. But that has also been in Wings of Liberty. Heart of the Swarm, it's all new, so who knows what's going to happen.
Indeed. I feel that I actually spoke at length to Mir, who is, of course, the Zerg player for Team Axiom, and it is his opinion at the moment in Heart of the Swarm that Zerg does need a little bit of help, and it seems that they're getting that with, I believe, did they put it in this patch, the addition of the Hatchery Tech Burrow?
They did.
Yeah. So that actually changes things around completely. It means that it's much harder to actively harass a Zerg player. And also, there's all sorts of annoying possibilities with roach pop-ups and things that you can do. So there is, we never know. I mean, that might be enough, certainly, to tip the balance here. But as you accurately pointed out, Crank is a PvZ specialist. So we'll see how Blade can take him on here. And we're going to be going into this game on Star Station.
We actually, you mentioned about the burrow being used to protect against harass, and we saw cats use that against the Oracle harass. And actually, I think I think it definitely gave cats a good counter to that Oracle harass. It's kind of weird to say you counter it by running away from it, but they eventually run out of energy, right? So
yes,
just hide underground.
They're not void rays. You know, the attacks that they're doing are very much energy based. So if they all pop it and then you suddenly burrow, they're then left hanging around the place like, oh, we look really dumb now, don't we? Like, okay, we're just going to try and slip out. We'll get our coats. So that's what ends up happening with Oracles in that situation. It also means that you don't have to have anywhere near as many Spore Crawlers. You do need something to shoot at them eventually, because otherwise it's going to be a thorn in your side. But Burrow is so versatile, and the ability to evolve that early is a pretty big deal. But of course, it is still 100-100, so that's 100 gas you're not spending in other things. That delays your lair tech, and it does limit you in some ways. So we'll see how the Zerg decide to adapt to it. At the moment, though, we are on Star Station in cross positions into the southwest. We have, with 4 wins under his belt in this King of the Hill, Axiom Crank in the Red Trunks playing Protoss, versus his opponent up to the northeast in the Blue Trunks playing Zerg. It is a Blade.
Cross map on this, I think, yeah, this is all 4 spawns, so it's not always cross map. But cross map, I would have to say, I think Blade's happy to see cross map. It's going to be longer distance for any air units to get across the map. Of course, any early Zealot pressure or Stalker pressure off the bat, Mothership Core, just gives him a little bit more reaction time against all these options.
Yeah, I have a feeling if he was in the southeast, he would have most likely been put under a lot of air pressure, and that's probably going to dictate the strategy that comes in. And it is possible, of course, to play air on this map, but it just takes longer for it to get there. It's more awkward maneuvering-wise. You can't bring in reinforcements as quickly, whereas if you happen to be in the southeast position, there was another map that was like that, actually. It was Shakuras Plateau. For a time, there was a lot of airplay going on over that because you had guys spawning both down to the south or both down to the north, so someone would use air to quickly run in there. And we actually do have, that was a pylon block being put in play here. However, Blade was able to establish down to the south instead.
One thing that's interesting about this map is how exposed the third base is, right? If we look at the potential third base, even where Blade is setting up, there's so many different angles and so much exposed area. I think that really, really helps a Zerg player. Both in defending against a 2-base Immortal its force fields are weaker, or on the flip side, attacking a Protoss' third base with the Master Roaches, or even Hydrotus, now that they're a little more maneuverable off creep, you could say.
Yeah, certainly. You don't have to deal with any dodgy choke points on the third whatsoever, which is really very beneficial at all. Trying to wall off that massive ramp on the third with force fields is not even a possibility. There's no less than 3 separate attack angles that you can take. So really, stopping an attack on the third base is difficult. So it wouldn't surprise me at all, actually, if we do see more of a two-base play coming out here from Crank in order to try and combat the fact that, you know, he knows that it's quite difficult.
It is. Do you think he'll opt for, like, a classic 2-base Immortal play, or maybe use those Oracles like he did against Cats?
Any way is possible, really. I'm interested to see whether or not we see +1 coming in here from Crank as soon as he has 100 gas. He is currently mining from 2 gas, which means that a +1 Zealot pressure against a 3-hatch Zerg on this position could work pretty well, especially considering that the way that he was forced to build, the creep spread between the natural and the third is going to take longer than it otherwise would. As you can see, he hasn't even actually really started creep spreading in a big way from his main yet, so this is going to take some time. So that means that Zealot pressure onto the third base is much, much more difficult to respond to. So there's definitely a possibility. But he is racking up that gas right now. The question is, what does he do? Does he decide to tech or does he decide to upgrade?
I've heard, oh, look, Lexi is going to invest that gas in a mothership core.
Mothership core? All right.
This early on, it means he's going to be delaying tech. So he probably wants to put on some harass with it. In fact, he does have it rallied out on the attack to join the Zeldin Stalker. So definitely looking to get some damage done to compensate for delaying a probe or two as well as his tech.
Yeah, it's quite safe to harass like this as well against Zerg too, because if suddenly a massive Speedlings comes and traps your force, the way that the actual teleport for the Mothership Core works is actually more like a town portal scroll. So this is a bit of correction from what I said earlier. It allows you to teleport the units around your Mothership Core to a targeted nexus. So you can escape quite easily from these really bad positions.
I think we saw TT1 actually using that a little bit on his run. He even did this move where he grabbed the Mothership and 7 Stalkers, like ran past the Zerg Spine Core on Queen, got into the main, killed like 10 drones, and then when the Speedlings rallied and killed him, he just teleported out and it's like, well, now you've lost your drones, and you had to make units, and I haven't lost anything but some energy. So definitely can be utilized very, very well for attacks.
Yeah, and also to counter that, the discussion we had earlier about Burrow is it's entirely possible if you have early Burrow, you expect this kind of harass is coming. Burrow pretty much shuts that down completely, and it doesn't allow you to get any drone kills. So always a possibility there. We have some pressure coming in right here from Crank, who is going to pressure the third by the looks of it. He has started that +1. I expected he would, because, of course, he grabbed that forge pretty early, but it's slightly delayed as a result of the Mothership Core, but it does give that nice Zealot ability to chop Zerglings into fine kibble. And now he's going to try and harass the third base. Speed is nowhere near done, so the Stalkers are having no problems here whatsoever. And now he's going to be able to snipe off this Spore Crawler before it goes up, kill the Queen, and he's got to be careful, of course, not to get surrounded.
He does, and with that Spore Crawler there, it's a little harder to get in there and recall if he commits his Stalkers into the worker line. Instead, happy to stay back and pound the hatchery. The Zealot, beating up with a brave charge in there, getting torn up, but he's done enough mind disruption. I would say he's totally happy with the damage he's done right here.
Perhaps. The thing is that I've got to say, Blade microed extremely well with those drones. He didn't lose a single one, which is incredibly good. He also, of course, forced the Time Warp out in order to protect the Stalkers, and now you'll see the Cranks get a little bit impetuous trying to deal with this. If these Zerglings pop out, which they will with speed, then these Stalkers could very easily get surrounded. He doesn't have the energy for a mass recall right now, so he does have to be careful and back off. So I feel that Blade defended that wonderfully. Yeah, you're right. It definitely disrupted mining time, and it forced some Lings out, but not a huge number.
Just very minimal defense, which is the sign of, you can almost say, the better the Zerg player, the more it looks like they're going to lose to an attack. Because they make just the bare minimum amount to defend. And Blade did that excellently, like you mentioned. He's got 20 food advantage. Crank, of course, was using that to set up a third behind it. So that was almost like, worry about my few units I'm sending at you, Zerg, because I don't want you to cross the map and start messing with my my third base intentions.
Yeah, and this base is Ling-proof. I mean, just look at the position of the photon cannon there with that many sentries. There's no real way for these Lings to do any real damage unless Crank quite literally falls asleep at the keyboard, which, considering the time over there, is very possible. So you never know. And he's going to go straight for the sentry here, and the sentry should be able to hold it. He needs to kind of force field. There it is. And this has been entirely shut down so far, and no real damage has been done.
Blade is going for Muleless play, which I actually am pretty excited to see. They've buffed the Muleless considerably, but we still haven't seen them that much against Protoss. We've seen more, Ultraless and Hydraless. So it's really cool that Blade's trying to utilize this Muleless. They move faster, they have the regeneration. And the regeneration, I think, most importantly means that later in the game when Protoss has Psystorm, getting Psystorm once and putting all your Muleless at half-life doesn't mean for the next 2 minutes they just have to sit in the corner. Now they have to sit in the corner for like 20 seconds, and then they're good to go again.
Yeah, and that's the odd thing about Muta play against Protoss, as well as in Wings, it was actually fairly effective. It could be used in certain circumstances. Mass Muta would generally beat down a Protoss that wasn't really interested in going for the Psystorm. In fact, I mean, that's the reason why we saw the Pulse Crystals upgrade come into play, because there was a time in the metagame where Mass Muta was what was being played on certain maps against Protoss, and it was really hard to shut it down.
It was, and now the Mutas are back stronger than ever. Of course, Phoenixes have more range in the Wings of Liberty, so that's a small advantage.
That. Yeah.
And Templar, I mean, even though they regenerate, Storm is still, of course, very, very, very strong. Blinkstalker as well. These Mutas are already getting a couple kills, disrupting mining time. I don't think Crank saw them coming.
No, he definitely didn't. He was definitely not prepared for that, but he does now have a significant number of Blinkstalkers, and he is microing them pretty well. He does have to watch out. Oh, Photon Overcharge put into play to get a cheeky couple of shots off there. Doesn't do a huge amount of damage, but the range means that normally Mutas can easily flank around there, but they're still going to get shot at by the, well, I suppose it's the equivalent of a siege tank there. And an interesting decision to hallucinate a Colossus. Once again, this hallucination play is coming in because a frequently ignored thing in HoTS is the fact that hallucination used to cost money to research, and nobody ever did it as a direct result. Now, that's not the case. We're seeing a lot more use of it, and it can trick Zerg into believing that something else is coming.
It can. It's something that a lot of players overlook because they're so used to not using it.
Yeah.
I know when I play games, I go back and I'm like, wait a minute, I could just scout him with hallucination or just use hallucination to make him think this, and I always smack myself in the head, but then next game I still don't think of it. So it's nice to see that Crank's been able to adapt to that new change really, really well.
Yeah, certainly. You know what I want to see? Something absolutely clutch would be the ability to hallucinate a bunch of probes into a mineral line that's currently being harassed by Mutalisks in order to absorb the bounce damage from the glaives and actually mean that fewer real probes are killed. Think about that. I mean, you hallucinate, and I believe it's, what, 4 probes per hallucination? That would be hilarious. Like, if anyone could pull that off, that would be brilliant.
Hilarious and effective. I mean, you make 8 fake probes might save you 3 or 4 real probes' lives.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, your sentry energy isn't worth that much. I mean, yeah, it's nice, but you'd much rather have the actual workers. Those little robotic minions do treat you well. More hallucinated Colossi coming out.
Yep.
Really trying to sell this to Blade.
Yeah, certainly. And Blade's doing really well with his economy. He's actually setting up a 5th proxy base up to the northwest, which has yet to be spotted here. And he has a big, scary army right now. He's going for the full Ling run by, actually, which is a really smart move. Uh-oh. He needs to morph those into Archons immediately. He manages to do that, and that's at least going to keep him alive for a little bit longer. Oh, massive storms going down in the path of Blade, who manages to deftly dodge out of the way, but takes a huge amount of damage in the process. So that counterattack's shut down by Crank. Great move from Blade to try and do that. It successfully delayed the attack. It also means that the jig is up. Those Colossus just disappeared from the force. There are,
and there's going to be no storms to this attack. He had to morph the 2 Templar Archons, and the other 3 had to use their storms. So Blade's going to have a much easier time getting his Banelings to connect with this army in this upcoming battle.
Yep, great shot there. As you can see, the projectiles are being used with the Infestor attack this time, but he has no problem with that. He is putting accurate shots in with his infested infestors. Wow, yeah, that's a special upgrade, the infested infestor. But unfortunately, he has lost another base. So Crank's army is continuing to push forward. It is about maxed, and here it comes.
Blade I think he was waiting for the Ultralisk to join his army, perhaps even waiting for the Adrenal Glands upgrade. That's moments from completing. Now he's going to go. The Banelings are trying to get in there. Fungal growth being deposited. The Mutas overhead. Wow, look at these Ultralisks just chew through that Protoss army.
They really do. The way that Ultra damage has been changed now, so it's a straight flat damage, that hits for 41 in an AoE, and they cleave fast. Their attack speed is under a second. That's nuts. Ultralisks are really good now, and as you can see, that did significant damage. Unfortunately, that proxy hatchery up to the northwest has been scouted there by Crank, so he's going to shut that down, which means that the possibility of having 4 bases here for Blade has unfortunately dematerialized. So we're going to be seeing a Blade try to build a stronger army here. We're going to have to see a different army composition from Crank. He's going to start adding Immortals into the mix. But even then, these are well-upgraded Ultralisks, man. They really are. He's going for 3-3. Does he have Kindness plating yet? He does, in fact. So these are monstrous.
They are, and he still has the Mutas play. I'm wondering why he's not really utilizing those to harass more.
That'll be good, yeah.
There's a couple of photon cannons, but you could still get in there, get some damage done.
Totally, yeah.
I think he has to put some pressure on Crank because Crank's now on 4 bases. Blade is, I mean, he's about to lose this top left base right here. And then his fourth will come up eventually, but you never want to be behind a Protoss in economy, at least unless maybe you have mass Broodlord army or something like that.
Yeah, I like the little split here by Crank, actually. He realizes that he's got enough to kill the hatchery, but he can also send some back as a rear guard to kill a ton of lings in the process. So he does that efficiently, and I believe that's still a 2-shot kill because he had +3 on those weapons. So he sliced up a ton of Zerglings there, efficiently engaged, and took the hatchery. So now we're in a position where, as you said, Crank is on full bases. We've got mass expand coming in here from Blade to try and counter that. He's going to take his 4th and his 5th up to the top. There's a couple of observers keeping an eye on things, and Blade's army is still scary. He is looking for that +3 push, he's looking for the maxed army, but he needs the economy to support the follow-up, so he needs to start mining from these other bases.
He is. I mean, what Blade really wants now is he wants more infestors, because he wants to be able to lock down that Protoss army, and then I think he wants to increase his Baneling count, because the Ultras are great, but you want to be able to plow through the Zealots instantly, so you don't get tangled up in those for any amount of time. And then the Banelings are actually pretty good against Stalkers too, as long as they're clumped up and as long as you can lock them down with those fungal growths.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. So that's probably what he's going for. He's also going for +2 in terms of air attack, so we can very well see a transition out of this eventually into Broodlord, and that would help a little bit, especially since he's got +3 upgrade as well, so those Broodlings would be absolutely amazing, but it also helps the Mutalisks if he decides to actually go for a mass Muta strategy or switch here. And in come the Mutas on the 4th base, which is not defended properly. Up comes the Photon Overcharge, but the damage per second of that thing isn't that great. The damage per second of that many Blink Stalkers, on the other hand, well, that's a different matter entirely. Shut down there. We actually have 30 Blink Stalkers on the map with +3.
Not a bad harassment, losing a couple mutas, but he got probably about 7 or 8 probe kills there, and the Mutalisks are really losing their value as this game goes on. So anything he can do with them is pretty much purely positive. Crank looks like he's a little bit angry about that, says, you harass me, I'm going to come down to you with the hammer fist.
Yeah, that's definitely what he's going for here. There's a lot of Ultras in this composition. It's going to be maxed out armies on either side here. There's got it I believe that's +2 armor about to finish here for Crank, so he probably wants to wait for that. Looking for some storms here. Actually, feedbacks on the Infestors and a mass storm to shut down the Banelings as they come through. That was quite pretty. That was really, really nice. And now we've got Crank smashing down on this Ultra Force, and suddenly Blade's army is completely split up. The Banelings don't do a thing, and they all get obliterated.
Oh no, Blade's army went from looking very intimidating to now all the Infestors are gone, just 2 more joining. All the Banelings are gone though, and these Ultras are on their own.
Oh man, and they're up against Immortals as well, and that is the one thing that shuts them down completely. GG, and there you go. It was a nice execution by Crank. Blade did well, but he wasn't really able to stop the economy of the Protoss player. The 4th base was taken safely. It was never really damaged a huge amount, and honestly, killing probes at the end of the game with that much in the bank really just allows Crank to build more units.
That's all it does, and you know, Crank's army, if it wasn't scary enough, add a few more Templar in there, a few more Archons, it gets even more scary. A very high Immortal count there by Crank. And I think what happened, like you mentioned it, he wasn't able to stop Crank's 4th base, and Crank really set up that 4th. I don't think he could have easily delayed at least with Speedlings, because Crank set it up while Crank was attacking him. So just even like 5 to 10 Speedlings out there really could have delayed it just a little bit, and that maybe is what he needed to do to try to stay in that game on an economic standpoint.
Yeah, I think so. And once you get a full base Protoss with that kind of army composition, it's pretty difficult to deal with. You've got to be able to hit him at the right point. Blade perhaps playing a little bit too passively, and as a result, he allowed his opponent to get position and actually pick the army apart with... I mean, if you were to reanalyze that move, it was quite something. What happened was the storms were deliberately used to kill a ton of Zerglings and Banelings as they attempted to go in. He flanked the Ultralisks, and he split the army in 2. And as a result, he was able to power through the center. He really was. It was just 3 Templar. Dismantled, dismantled Blade's entire army. In fact, I'm going to get the feedbacks, of course, on the Infestors. Yes. Yeah, was it like 2-3 feedbacks, and then like 2-3 side storms, and all of a sudden the whole army is gone. I'm going to try to get the replay back up to that point so we can see exactly how much, all the Infestors and everything that really went down. That was good. That was something worth watching. It was, that's top couple moves of, that's the best move of today, I would have to say, that 3 Templar thing. I mean, there was a couple other cool ones. The Widowmine turret container was really cool, but that wasn't a single little move like this that was, I've almost, I can't
think if I've ever seen 3 Templar be that effective against Zerg before. I mean, sure, we've seen it against the bio armies, but against an Ultralisk-based composition, just it's like a scalpel, takes out all the critical support units, and then the Ultralists are just big cows, right? Pretty easily managed on their own.
Yeah, not only that, but actually, if you think about it, I have a feeling that if you watch that replay, you'll probably see the Ultralisks actually worked against him because they funneled the Zerglings and the Banelings into the Storms, which meant that they were much, much more effective than they should have been. So, yeah, that was really nice.
I mean, if you think about it from an Ultralisk perspective, right? They just feel this like little graze on their back, and it just pisses them off, so they start going crazy. Yeah. So they're not so worried about it. But the little guys underneath them, they're scampering around, and they're just getting absolutely mauled. And then the Ultralists, you know, they may not worry about the storm, but then they have to engage their army without any backup, and all of a sudden that's a rough situation. So that was our last game for the night, but I'm almost up to that point to replay. I just want to see that one again. This was a long game, actually. There's a lot of back-and-forth action here. Blade's Mutalisks were actually pretty effective, I think. I like the use of Mutalisks. I think he could have done a little more with them, though. Maybe transition a little slower. Maybe use some more mass Mutalisks. I don't know, though. I don't play Zerg, so I don't have the same experience with using Mutalisks against Protoss and knowing all the ins and outs of them like Blade does.
Yeah, I think the message with it is that Blizzard have essentially said to Zerg players, you've got more longevity with your Mutalisks because of the speed, which allows you to get out quicker, and you can also regenerate the damage that you've taken. So as long as you keep your Mutants alive, they're going to be a constant threat until they are... You've got to shut them down completely, right? You can't just wear them down anymore the way that you used to be able to. You have to kill them, because otherwise they're going to pop right back in there with full health. So I feel that it definitely could have been used a little bit better, maybe to cut off reinforcements, because yeah, it's a slow-ish army, not the slowest army, because of course it has Blink, but there are ways to exploit it. He could have killed more in terms of the probe count. He could have actually gone after tech as well, and he didn't really get the opportunity to do that.
He didn't. You know, Crank did the right thing, which is putting him on a defensive, and that's something you never want to have to do with Mutas, is be on a defensive. I do have this replay loaded up now, so I know unfortunately you won't be able to keep in touch with us, but the viewers can check this out. The techniques that Crank uses, I mean, first he blinks forward 6 Stalkers, takes out one of this Infestor that has 150 energy, that's just so key there, knocks that guy out, gets away before a fungal can land on him, and then right after that he says, okay, I see what he has. I see he's got a bunch of Banings, 3 more Infestors with a lot of energy. I've got to take out those key units, so he sends these 3 Templar forward. These Templar all have full energy, so they run in forward there, and they can get 3 feedbacks off instantly, so there's no fungal. This gives them the ability to move around. And then there's still plenty more storms left on each of these guys. 4 storms goes down, and all of a sudden, if we look at the units lost tab, I mean, it's Crank's lost 8,000, Blade has lost 14,500, and he lost just about, I would say, 2,000 resources just to those feedbacks and storms right there. And then not to mention the fact that unfortunately he doesn't pay attention to these Banings, and as they roll around there, they just get massacred. And without that shock damage the Banings provide, the Ultralisks, when they go up against this many Immortals, Archons, and Stalkers, have no chance at all. And it's, I mean, that was one of the most one-sided fights that I've seen, that last battle right there.
It was just so stupidly well executed that it actually made me sick. Like, I want to go and vomit right now, because if I ever had to play against a Protoss that was able to do that to me, I think I would just quit StarCraft 2 and, I don't know, go and play Quake. Because, quite frankly, that was horrible to watch. It's not like Blade even played badly. He didn't actually play. Blade played extremely well. But that engagement could not have been better. There was nothing you could have improved about that.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely nothing. I mean, Crank is like we've talked about it before, a true master of PvZ. I think his largest skill set is, like you just said, the utilization of his units. Every single piece operates in its own most optimal way. You know, because there's so many pieces of the Protoss army. There's the Archons, the Immortals, there's the Blink Stalkers, there's a Templar, and Crank takes it even one step further, and he uses different groups of Blink Stalkers separately. Like he says, okay, I want to get rid of some Infestors. I don't really feel comfortable sending my Templar up in the dark, but I don't want to send my entire Blink Stalker army up because they could get caught by fungal. So I'll just take a small little group to scout around. And then, so he has so many little independent operators in his army. It's like you're playing 5 people controlling one army. That's very, very, very scary. Well, I think that wraps it up for today's Heartless Swarm King of the Hill. Crank is our current champion. Hopefully we'll see if we can get back on Monday. Maybe not, but in either case, he has 5 wins, so he is going to give himself some money. I definitely want to thank you, Total Biscuit, for joining us here today. It's unfortunate Alex could make it, but it was just an absolute pleasure to get the opportunity to cast with you, especially casting with using your knowledge of Crank, being him being one of your players.
Yeah, well, you know, it's fairly rare that anyone says using Total Biscuit's knowledge of anything, but, you know, I'll take the compliment. That's very, very nice of you. Thank you very much for saying that. But it was great pleasure to cast with you, of course, and helpful that we had so many Protoss playing. You know, you were able to provide exceptional analysis there, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. Those were actually really enjoyable matches, and once again, I keep stressing this. There's a reason why I'm focusing on HoTS right now, because this is a new game. This is so much more fun to watch, and there are so many new strategies in play. So hopefully we continue to see that as we go through to the launch in March. So big thanks to everyone that tuned in to watch today. Of course, thanks to MLG for going so kind of all in on Heart of the Swarm, even so early on, to present these amazing show matches. And of course, big thanks to Axiom Esports and Axiom Crank for providing those games, and everyone that fought against him and putting on some exceptional, entertaining stuff. That was really fun.
Thank you again for joining us, Total Biscuit. I hope I'll see you again shortly in the future for another event. Also, a few things to let you guys know. If you just tuned in later in this show match, or you want to catch up in some of our past show matches, go check them out on YouTube at www.youtube.com/official MLGSC2. Also, don't forget to check out Full Sail University. Full Sail University is MLG's official education partner. Go to fullsail.edu/MLG for more information about many of their great programs, including game design, audio engineering, video production, and more. In fact, many of our MLG employees actually came from Full Sail. All of our graphics are made from a Full Sail graduate, as well as, of course, we have an audio engineer and a 3D animation intern who both came from Full Sail as well. So it's a great opportunity if you want to learn how to make a video game and all the cool things that come into it. Go check out Full Sail EDU. That's going to wrap it up for tonight's Heartless Swarm exhibition match. We'll be right back in about 10 minutes with the next episode of Rules of Engagement. It's going to be a little bit of self-critique as I look at my own replays and talk about some of the mistakes I made and some ways to improve my own play. We'll see you guys in a few minutes. Stay tuned.